Joe Kent joins me now, retired Special Forces warrant officer, 11 combat deployments, 8 to Iraq, the Gold Star husband of fallen soldier Shannon Kent, who was killed by ISIS, and now seeking to replace RINO Republican Jaime Herrera Butler, who joined me on the show earlier this week. Joe, welcome back to the program, and I take it you heard that interview. Were you impressed?
Thank you so much for having me back on, Lars. I heard the interview, and I was not impressed. I was actually a little bit perturbed with the way the Congresswoman represented the events of January 6th and then her stances on a wide variety of issues.
Well, I was a little incensed as well, although I promised everybody I'd be on my best behavior. So I asked Jaime Herrera Butler to explain. I think she failed to explain. If anybody wants to hear the entire 2-segment interview, it's available on our website for free, so go ahead. But you wanted to respond to this, and I think you should, because you're seeking to replace her in the U.S. Congress, and I haven't made endorsements yet. We've got a number of candidates running, although you may want to say something about, I understand that you've taken issue with the way one of your opponents is raising money, or who she has raising money for her, but I haven't taken a position yet on which candidate is going to be the best. But Joe, have at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jaime Herrera Butler continues to portray the events of January 6th in accordance with the mainstream media and the far left, and the actual timeline of that event has been refuted the more data that's actually come to light. So she misrepresented the statements by Secretary of Defense Chris Miller, whom I'm endorsed by, and whom I had the opportunity and the honor to serve under in combat in Iraq when we were both in Special Forces. So Chris Miller's statements pretty much vindicate President Trump. He lays out how the D.C. mayor was the one who denied the request for additional troops at the Capitol. She also uses a strawman argument that President Trump somehow could have in real time stopped the few individuals that were acting violently and lawlessly on that day. It's absurd to think that people that are in the middle of committing a crime or checking their Twitter feed or waiting for some sort of centralized command from President Trump. President Trump's statements did not incite any kind of violence. That's clear to anybody who reads the full statement of his speech or understands the layout of the Capitol to get from the ellipse all the way to the Capitol building. It's just not possible to cover in a short period of time. Also, Jaime Herrera Butler said that she is a law and order candidate or a law and order representative. This is completely false. While Antifa was burning and rioting right on our doorstep and making incursions into Vancouver, into her district, right next to her office, she said absolutely nothing. And as a matter of fact, she crossed the aisle to vote with the Democrats to take away the ability of President Trump to deploy troops to quell the Antifa terrorism that was taking place in our district. She also, again, claims to be law and order. She voted with the Democrats to withhold funds and stop the construction of the border wall. She recently just voted for amnesty inside of a farm bill for a bunch of illegal immigrants. So she does not have the best interest in mind for the people of this district. She will not stand tall and fight for us. She continues to side with the radical left, the mainstream media, and then establishment Republicans like Liz Cheney when Jaime Herrera Butler once again crossed out to vote to leave our troops in Syria to keep us in endless wars. She continued to vote for National Defense Authorization Act after act, keeping us in endless wars over and over again. This is why I'm challenging Jaime Herrera Butler to a debate at the time and place of her choosing. Anytime that she wants, she can articulate what she views as traditional conservative values. I think her portrayal of conservative values have left essentially nothing left to conserve. And this is why we need strong America First populist policies to protect this district and to put our nation and to put our district first.
I'll tell you what, Joe, I'll extend you this offer. She can choose the time and place. If you want to have that broadcast on this show, I'd be happy to have a debate and to moderate it, or have somebody else. I would rather not hand it off to somebody else to moderate, but I could moderate a debate, and I'd be willing to host it. And then not just her entire district, but the entire region would be able to hear this debate, because I think this is a signature opportunity where Jaime Herrera Butler, I don't think, and I've said so, I don't think she did right by her constituents. But you brought up an interesting point that, you know, I'd love to debate Jaime for an hour on this subject, on the subject of January 6th. It may be beating a dead horse, but the fact is, when she said, well, President Trump did nothing to stop it. Well, if she means he should have, the minute he heard there was trouble at the Capitol, he should have said, I'm going to make an announcement on, live stream and on network TV, say, please, everybody who's rioting at the Capitol, stop. it would have seemed transparently like pandering to me because, as you point out, none of the people who were inside the building at that time, the maybe 500 people who had actually entered the building, who she says were the 15,000 standing around outside. It's legal to stand around outside that building. It's not legal to break into it. And yet she wants to tar 12 to 15,000 people for merely walking up on Capitol Hill and then standing in areas that are open to the public. I thought that was wrong. But the idea that somehow if Trump had, gone on national television or live on stream and said, please stop, that it would have made any difference whatsoever. He did make the suggestion the day before, and I'd like to ask you about that, where he said to Pentagon officials, I think we ought to have 10,000 National Guard troops here just in case there's a problem. And she says that's an indictment of him saying he was anticipating trouble. Well, if he was anticipating trouble, and the theory is that it was somehow on his behalf, why would he want 10,000 troops there? And why didn't the Pentagon decide to put them there? As I understand it, the Pentagon was worried about optics or something.
Right. There was concerns about optics, and ultimately the security of the day of the Capitol was in the hands of the D.C. mayor, and she's the one that ultimately said that they didn't want to have troops on the ground. She was concerned with the optics that took place prior that summer, so she opted to not actually call for reinforcements from the Pentagon, from the National Guard troops, until the riot was well underway. So, I mean, I spent my entire career in situations like this. You can't, you have to have planning, and you have to actually have communications worked out, and you actually have to have rehearsals worked out for things to go smoothly in a very stressful situation like that. And it's just clear that this was a failure of planning. And now there's people with the failure of planning that are trying to cover their tracks and make it look like there was this massive, what they call an insurrection, because that's very convenient. It covers up their own failings, but also, and this is a major issue I have with Representative Butler, they're taking the events of January 6th to try and snuff out the entire Trump movement and the America First movement and to brand all of us as terrorists or insurrectionists because we have legitimate questions about the way the election went and because we support the America First policy. So they're taking this whole idea of January 6th and they're going to weaponize it against patriotic Americans. And I think that's very dangerous. And I think it's very dangerous that Representative Butler is going along with that narrative. It does a disservice to her constituents and to all Americans.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's Joe Kent. Joe, thanks for your service in uniform, and thanks for running for political office.